Math 70, section 6.3. In this section, you're going to be factoring trinomials where they're quadratic, but the leading coefficient, the a value, is not a 1. So in the previous problems, you had something like x squared plus 6x plus 5. And you said, what time, because there's a 1 here, what times what is x squared, which is simple, x times x. And then for 5, what times what is 5 but adds to be 6? And that's positive 5, positive 1. Well, in this case, you're going to have a leading coefficient that's not a 1. So this is what you're going to do in this case. So the first problem says 3x squared plus 14x plus 15. So now I wrote it out here. There's two methods to solve these ones, and these are the least favorite problems to factor when the leading coefficient, you can see, is not a 1. There's two methods you can do. I'm going to show you in the first 4 problems. I'm going to show you the first method, which we call factoring by grouping, and then the second method is by it's called guess and check or trial and error. You get to pick whichever method you want to use. But for this one, you always want to look to see if there's any term, GCF, you can pull out. Anytime you can pull a greatest common factor, it's going to make the process a lot less tedious. Okay, so this is what you're going to do. This is your a value, ax squared plus bx plus c. So the number in front of x squared we call the a value, and the constant is called c. What you're going to do is multiply these two numbers together. We call it AC, a times c. A is 3, c is 15. 3 times 15 is 45. What you're going to do is look at numbers that multiply to give you 45. So we've got 1 times 45, we've got 3 times 15, and we've got 5 times 9. Okay, so now what you want to do is decide which of these products you are going to use to rename to get to 14x. So we are going to take 14x and rename it as 5x plus 9x, because 5 times 9 is 45. So this 14x is 5x plus 9x. So we're going to copy 15 and we're going to copy 3x squared. So now this is a factoring by grouping. You did this in section 6.1. You're going to take 2 at a time. So take these two terms and see what's common. We've got an x common. So we're going to pull an x out and you're left with 3x plus 5. Then here you're going to take out what's common, which is a 3. And you're left with 3x plus 5. And, 3x plus 5. And now these two are the same, so 3x plus 5 comes out. And you're left with x plus 3. Okay? Try this again. So that was example 1. Example 2. So we're going to look at 12x squared minus 1x minus 1. So here it is, 12x squared minus x minus 1. So factors of 12. So 12, because 12 times, it's a times c. 12 is a, c is 1. Let's just look at, just look at the 1 and the 12. So we've got factor, we want to get to 12. So what two numbers multiply to give you 12? So we've got 1 and 12, we've got 2 and 6, and we've got 3 and 4. Okay, 3 and 4 is what I'm going after. Why 3 and 4? Because if I make the 4 negative and the 3 positive, I will get negative x. And I will also, so the 4 becomes negative and the 3 is positive. So I'm going to rewrite this as 12x squared plus 3x minus 4x minus 1. So negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. We really want negative 12. We want a positive times a negative. And we want these to add up to be negative 1. So now I'm going to factor by grouping. I'm going to pull out here a 3x, and I'm left with 4x plus 1. In here, I'm just going to take out a negative 1, and I'm left with 4x plus 1. The 4x plus 1 comes out, and then you're left with 3x minus 1. Okay? Example 3. That one, remember, you always want to pull a common factor out. So we've got negative 18x squared plus 33x plus 30. So if you definitely want to pull out the negative 1, but you also have a 3 common. So negative 3 we're going to take out, and you're left with 6x squared minus 11x minus 10. Now let's check to see that we did this right. Negative 3 times 6x squared is negative 18x squared. Negative 3 times negative 11x is 33x, and negative 3 times negative 10 is positive 30. Okay, so that's going to stay outside. Now we want to do our a times c. So 6 times negative 10, which is negative 60. If you don't want to deal with the negative, you don't have to. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you 60, but are going to add to be negative 11. Okay, so let's look at all of them. We've got 1 times 60. We've got 2 times 30. We've got 6 times 10. We have 5 and 12. And that's not going to give us, we have actually 4 and 15. There we go. So that's it, 4 and 15. 4 times 15 is 60. We're going to make the 15 negative and the 6 positive. So we've got 6x squared. We've got a plus 4x, minus 15x, and then minus 10. Don't forget you have a negative 3 out here still. So now take 2 at a time. Take these two. I'm going to take out a 2x. I'm left with 3x plus 2. Here I'm going to take out a negative 5. I'm left with 3x plus 2. Now I take out the 3x squared. I'm sorry, 3x plus 2. And I'm left with 2x minus 5. And don't forget to bring down that negative 3. Okay. Example number 4. This one just talks about if you have variables on both. You're just going to put the variables on each end. But look at, we've got a 12. First of all, there's nothing that you can pull out. So we're going to do 12 times 6, which is 72. Okay? So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you 72, but the middle term is going to be a 1. So I already know what it is. It's 8, and 9. 8 times 9 is 72, but if I make this a positive and this a negative, I'm going to get a 1. So I'm going to write this as 12x squared minus 8xy plus 9xy minus 6y squared. Okay, so I'm going to factor a 4x here. I'm left with 3x minus 2y. Here I'm going to take out a negative 3y, and I'm left with 3x minus 2y. And you're left with 3x minus 2y times 4x minus 3y. Okay? And now I'm going to show you what trial and error looks like. And that to me is, I find the easiest method, 2x squared plus 7x plus 5. I call this guess and check. Okay, so you just have to keep guessing and checking. So in other words, what two terms multiply to give you 2x squared? Let's say 2x times x is 2x squared. Which two numbers multiply to give you 5, a positive 5? So I could put a 5 here and a 1 here. Or what I could have done was I could have put a 5 here and a 1 here. And I want them both to be positive because I want these to be multiplied to give me positive, and I want this to add to be a positive. So one of these combinations, those are the only two terms that multiply to give you 5. Where it gets tricky is when this number has multiple different types of factors, like 12 or 24. So how do you know which is the correct answer? Well, you have to FOIL it to see which one works. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 1 is 2x. 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times 1 is 5. These two do add to be 7x, so this is the correct answer. If I did this one, this would end up being 10x plus 1x is 11x. This does not work. So I did this combination by guessing and checking. The answer is 2x plus 5 times x plus 1. Example 6, we're going to do by trial and error again. So we're going to say 7x squared minus 18x plus 8. Always check to see if there's something that you can pull out. Okay, so there's nothing, I don't see anything that's common. I know for sure 7 times x is 7x. Okay, so now I have to look to see what two numbers, what are some possible choices that are going to give me an 8, positive 8. Now, because this number is negative, I need them both to be negative. Okay, so now what are my choices? What two numbers multiply to give me 8? Ooh, I could use -1 and -8. I could use -2, -4. I could use, and I could switch these around. So I could put a -8 here and a -1 here, and I could put a -4 here and a -2 here. So remember, so the first term is, first terms are 7x and x. Okay, so here's what you hit. These are your choices. So now what you have to do is FOIL them. Now, you really don't have to FOIL. We know the first and the last. We know these two are going to give me that term. We know these two are going to give me that. We put them here. I need to do the outer and the inners. And I need to see which combination gives me -18x. Well, I know this outer and this inner is not going to give me negative. That's -56. Nope. This is -28 minus 2. That's not going to work. This is -7 and -8. So -7x, -8x. That gives me -15. But it looks like this one's the one because it's -14 minus 4 is that. So this is the correct answer. And that's how you use guess and check, trial and error. Okay, let's try another example of trial and error. we've got example number 7. Get some scrap paper here. Example number 7 says 10x squared minus 13x minus 3. Okay, so now for this one, what two numbers multiply to give you 10? So I could have 10x and 1x. I could have 2x and 5x. Those are some combinations, okay? Those are the only ones. And now negative 3. I could put 1 has to be positive and 1 has to be negative. Now, if I do this one, I just remember you don't have to do the FOIL, F-O-I-L. I just need to do the O and the I. So 10x times 1 is 10x minus 3x. That's not going to work. What if I put negative 3 here and a positive 1 here? That's going to give me positive 2 minus 15, and that works. I just did it by guessing checking. Now, if you don't want to use this method, you can do the A times C and then break that negative 13 up into factors. Okay? We have number 9. Number 9 and then number 10, and we're done. Number 9, what happens if we have something common? In this case, we have a common, we could take a 2 out. And we're left with 24x squared plus 2xy and then minus 15y squared. Okay, so for this one, we could be, we're going to look for factors of negative 15 and factors of 24. And now this could get actually crazy because you could keep going back and forth with numbers that multiply to give you 24. But it's 6x times 4y, and you just gotta keep, 6x and 4x. And then what two combinations give you negative 15y squared? It ends up being 5y and negative 3y. And now when you FOIL, remember, you don't have to do the first and the last. You want to do the outer. So that's negative 18 plus 20 is your 2xy. And the last one, quickly, always, if you see a negative, pull that out first. So for this one, always take out a negative 1, and you're left with 14x squared. Make sure you change all the signs, okay? So now, what times what is 14x squared? Let's try 7x and 2x. And then what times what is negative 15? So you could do negative 5, positive 3. I'm just guessing. So now I don't have to do these two or these two. I have to do, this is 21. This gives you 21 minus 10. That's not going to work. So what if I did 7x and 2x, and I did negative 3 and positive 5? So this would be 35. And then minus 6. That is going to be good, except I need to change the signs. So it looks like 7x plus 3, 2x minus 5. That looks like that's going to work. So 7x times 2x is 14x. This is negative 35. This multiplied is positive 6. And that gives me our negative 29. So don't forget to bring down that negative 1 that you pulled out. And that's section 6.3, factoring polynomials where the A value is not a 1.